Charlie Munger, who served as the business partner to Warren Buffett and stands as one of the most successful investors in all of human history, once said something that completely reshaped my entire philosophy on building wealth. He did not mince words when he stated that the first 100,000 is a total bitch, but he emphasized that you simply have to do it no matter what. It is important to notice that he did not describe the first 100,000 as merely difficult or even just challenging. He chose a much more visceral and aggressive word to describe the start of the journey. When a billionaire who built a massive fortune through decades of extreme patience and discipline chooses a word like that, you have to pay attention, because that choice of words matters deeply. I want to take a moment to describe what this experience feels like from the inside, because I know that so many of you are currently living through this exact reality. Imagine that you have already been investing for 3 years and you are consistently putting away $500 every month, which we all know is not an easy feat to accomplish. You are making actual and palpable sacrifices. You are saying no to exciting trips and consciously driving an older car, and deliberately skipping the lifestyle upgrades your coworkers are enjoying without a second thought. You check your portfolio, and it states you have exactly $42,000. And then you perform the mental math on the future. You realize that at this exact rate, it is going to take you another 4 years just to hit that initial 100,000 mark. This means it will be 7 years in total to finally reach 6 figures. And then something truly demoralizing happens to your spirit. You look at your friends who are not investing a single penny at all. They are going on exotic vacations and buying brand new cars and eating out at fancy restaurants whenever they want. And yes, it is true that they will likely have absolutely nothing saved in 30 years. But right now, in this moment, they are having all the fun. And you are left staring at a number that barely seems to move upward at all, no matter how hard you grind and no matter how much you sacrifice. Here is what nobody tells you about this process. That feeling of futility and that sense that you are sacrificing everything for a number that crawls at a snail's pace is only temporary. On the other side of $100,000 is a completely different mathematical reality, where everything accelerates in ways that will genuinely shock you. My name is Kyle, and I spend way too much time thinking about why the first $100,000 is the hardest money you will ever accumulate. If you are someone who is grinding toward your first major investing milestone and wondering if it is even worth it, or if you are just starting out and need to understand what you are getting into, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Here is the thing about compound interest that most people fundamentally misunderstand. Everyone knows the basic concept. Your money earns returns, and then those returns earn returns, and it snowballs over time. But what people do not internalize is that compound interest is an exponential function, and exponential functions are counterintuitive to human brains that evolved to think linearly. We expect things to grow at a constant rate. If I save $10,000 this year, I expect to have $20,000 in 2 years and $30,000 in 3 years. That is linear thinking. But compound growth does not work in a straight line at all. It is incredibly slow at first, and it moves at a pace that is almost imperceptibly slow to the human eye. And then it suddenly curves upward faster and faster until it is growing at rates that seem almost absurd and even impossible. The first $100,000 is brutal because you are spending all your time at the flattest part of that curve. Your contributions and the money coming directly out of your paycheck are doing almost all the work. At this stage, the compound growth is barely contributing anything to your wealth. But once you finally get past $100,000, the curve starts to bend upward. Your money starts pulling more and more of the weight, and your own contributions become a smaller and smaller percentage of your annual growth. Let me show you exactly what this looks like in real numbers, because the math here is the whole point of this entire journey. Let us say you are starting from exactly zero and you are investing $500 per month. This adds up to $6,000 per year into an index fund that is earning an average of 10% annually. To go from zero all the way to $100,000 takes about 7 years and 5 months. That is 89 months of constant grinding and sacrificing and watching your balance creep up slowly, while compound interest barely registers on the screen. Your total contributions over that long period are about $44,500. The other $55,500 comes from your investment gains. Notice that even after 7 years, your contributions and your gains are roughly equal because you are still doing half the work yourself. Now here is where it gets really interesting. To go from 100,000 to 200,000 takes only 3 years and 8 months, and not 7 years. That is less than half the time it took you to reach the first milestone. Your contributions over that specific period are about $22,000, but your investment gains are a massive $78,000. Your money is now doing more than 3 times the work that you are doing. The second 100,000 took half as long as the first because compound interest finally had something substantial to work with. But wait, because it gets even more dramatic from here? To go from 200,000 to 300,000 takes only 2 years and 7 months, and going from 300,000 to 400,000 takes only about 2 years. By the time you are going from 900,000 to 1 million, it takes just over 1 year. The same 100,000 that took you 7.5 years to accumulate the first time now takes you only 13 months. This is the magic of compounding, but you only experience this magic if you survive the brutal early years. Let me put this in a different frame that might make it click. In year 1 of investing $500 per month at 10% returns, your investment gains for the entire year are about $300. Just $300. You contributed $6,000 and the market gave you $300. It feels like nothing because it basically is nothing, and you are doing 95% of the work yourself. In year 10, when your portfolio has grown to around $100,000, your investment gains for that single year are approximately $10,000. That is almost double your annual contributions. Your money is now finally outpacing your effort. In year 20, with a portfolio of around $340,000, your annual gains are $34,000. You are contributing $6,000, and your investments are generating $34,000. Your money is now doing nearly 5 times the work that you are. By year 30, with a portfolio of over $1 million, your annual gains are over $100,000. You contributed $6,000, and your investments generated $100,000. Your money is doing nearly 17 times the work you are. By year 30, you could stop contributing entirely, and your portfolio would still grow by 6 figures annually. But here's the catch that Murr understood deeply. You cannot skip to year 30. You cannot bypass the slow and grinding early years when your contributions dominate and your gains feel meaningless. The only path to the explosive growth of the later years is through the brutal slog of the early years. That is exactly why the first 100,000 is a total bitch. It is not just hard because you have to save a lot of money. It is hard because the math simply is not helping you yet. At this stage, you have to keep absolute faith in a process that will not show you any real or significant results for years. Now, you might be thinking, Kyle, okay, the math makes sense, but 7 years is still 7 years. Whether I am grinding to 100,000 or grinding to 200,000, I am still grinding. What is the actual practical difference? And here is what most people do not realize. The psychological game changes completely once you cross that 100,000 threshold. There is something significant that happens in your brain when you finally have 6 figures invested. First, the number starts to feel real. $20,000 in a brokerage account feels like an emergency fund or a car. $40,000 feels like maybe a down payment someday. No, 100,000 starts to feel like actual wealth, and it starts to feel like you are actually building something truly meaningful. This psychological shift matters deeply, because it is what sustains your motivation. The number one reason people fail at long-term investing is not because they pick the wrong funds or because they time the market badly. It is simply because they quit. They give up during those early years when the progress feels completely hopeless and like they are going nowhere. They raid their retirement accounts for short-term wants, or they stop contributing entirely during market downturns. Anything that helps you stay in the game is incredibly valuable. And crossing major psychological thresholds like this is exactly what keeps you in the game for the long haul. Second, once you have $100,000, market movements start to generate meaningful dollar amounts. A 2% gain on $20,000 is only $400. That is nice, but it is not exactly life-changing. No, a 2% gain on $100,000 is $2,000. That is a vacation, or that is a month's rent. You start to viscerally feel your money working for you, which reinforces the behavior of investing even more than before. Third, and this is the one nobody talks about, reaching $100,000 proves to yourself that you can actually do this. So many people have a deep-seated belief that wealth building is something that happens only to other people, and that the system is rigged and they will never get ahead. When you hit $100,000, you have proven that belief wrong, and you have demonstrated to yourself that you are capable of accumulating meaningful wealth. That identity shift from someone who cannot build wealth to someone who has built wealth and will continue to do so is absolutely priceless, and it changes every financial decision you make going forward. Let me talk about what it actually takes to reach 100,000, because I want this to be practical and not just theoretical. At $300 per month with 10% returns hitting 100,000 takes about 12 years. At $500 per month, it takes about 7.5 years. At $1,000 per month, it takes about 4.5 years. At $1,500 per month, it takes about 3.5 years. And if you can do $2,000 per month, you are looking at only about 2 years and 10 months. I know that investing $2,000 a month sounds completely impossible to a lot of you, especially if you are currently early in your career and just finding your footing. But here is the thing, you do not actually have to start at that high level. The absolute key to this entire process is to increase your contributions over time as your income naturally grows. If you are investing $500 a month at age 25, but you increase that by just $100 every single year, as you get raises and promotions, you will hit $100,000 much faster than the static 7.5-year calculation suggests. The absolute worst thing you can possibly do is hear that it takes 7.5 years and feel defeated before you even start the journey. The average time to reach 100,000 for people who start early and increase their contributions as they go is often closer to only 5 years. The tragedy is that many of these people earned plenty of money over their careers. The median lifetime earnings for an American worker is about $2 million. $2 million passes through the average person's hands over their working life, and they end up with only $185,000 to show for it. That is less than 10% captured as wealth. And the reason for this is almost always the same. They never prioritized reaching that first $100,000. They never pushed through the brutal early years. They started, and they stopped, and they contributed during the good years and withdrew during the bad years. They never built enough momentum for compounding to finally take over and do the heavy lifting. Here is a statistic that should terrify you. According to Vanguard's How America Saves report, the median 401k balance for their participants aged 25 to 34 is only $12,000. If those people stay on that current trajectory, they will never manage to escape the flat part of the compound curve. They will spend 40 years of their lives working, and in the end, they will have almost nothing to show for it. Let me share what I call the $100,000 mindset. Because getting there is not just about the math and the spreadsheets. It is about making the first 100,000 an obsession. Not in an unhealthy or obsessive way, but in a focused and prioritized way that recognizes this milestone for exactly what it is. This is the single most important financial target of your entire life. Every other financial milestone after 100,000 is easier, 200,000 is easier, 300,000 is easier, a million is easier. But you will never get to any of them without conquering the first 100,000. Adopting this mindset means treating the first $100,000 as an absolute, non-negotiable priority in your life. It is not just a suggestion or a vague goal, but the foundation of everything you are building for your future. It means that when you finally get a raise at work, at least half of that new income, or perhaps even more, goes straight to increasing your monthly investment contributions instead of disappearing into your daily expenses. It means that whenever you receive a bonus or a tax refund or any kind of unexpected windfall, that money goes directly into your brokerage account to help you reach that target faster. It means that you begin to evaluate every single major spending decision through the very specific lens of whether this purchase helps or hurts your steady progress toward $100,000. Imagine you want to upgrade your apartment to something nicer that costs $400 more per month. That is $4,800 a year that is not being invested at 10% returns over 30 years. That simple upgrade is actually costing you over $400,000 in lost wealth. You have to ask yourself if the nicer apartment is really worth $400,000 to you. When you start doing this math on every decision you make, the path to $100,000 becomes much clearer to see. Now I need to address something incredibly important because I do not want this video to feel hopeless if you are starting late in the game. Let us say you are 40 years old and you have got basically nothing saved up yet. Is that first 100,000 still worth grinding for at that age? The answer is absolutely yes, and here is exactly why. First, the math still works, it just works over a much shorter timeline. 100,000 at age 45, invested for 20 more years at 10% returns, becomes about 670,000 by age 65. That is not what you would have if you started at 22, but it is absolutely transformative compared to having nothing at all. Second, starting late often comes with a much higher income. If you are 40, with an established career, you might be able to invest $2,000 or even $3,000 every month, which dramatically compresses the timeline to reach $100,000. Third, and most importantly, getting to $100,000 late is infinitely better than never getting there at all. The difference between retiring with $600,000 and retiring with absolutely nothing is the difference between modest security and desperate poverty. It is never too late for that massive difference to matter for your life. Let me give you a practical framework for accelerating your path to 100,000, because I want you to take actual action after this video and not just feel informed about the theory. The first lever you can pull is your savings rate. Every single percentage point you can add to your savings rate matters enormously in these early years when you are trying to build up your momentum. Going from saving 10% of your income to 15% sounds like it is not much, but it can actually shave a full year or even more off your entire journey to reach 100,000. You must track your spending ruthlessly to find these extra opportunities. You need to eliminate the vampire costs from your life, which are those recurring charges that you do not even notice anymore. Take the time to negotiate your bills and do whatever it takes to find an extra $200 or $300 per month in your budget. In the early years of your journey, these extra contributions are worth far more to your progress than the compounding returns they will eventually generate later on. The second major lever you can use to accelerate your path is your income. I know this is often easier said than done, but every single dollar of additional income you earn is a potential dollar of additional investment for your future. Whether that is through a side hustle, or working overtime, or making a job switch for higher pay, or simply developing new skills that command higher salaries, you have to realize that your income is the ultimate cap on how fast you can save. At a 50% savings rate, someone making $40,000 can invest $20,000 a year. Meanwhile, someone making $80,000 can invest $40,000 a year. The higher earner will hit $100,000 twice as fast as the other, all else being equal. The third lever is asset allocation. And this is a bit more nuanced than the other. In the accumulation phase, especially when you are young, you want to prioritize growth. That typically means being heavily weighted towards stocks, probably 90% or even more of your total portfolio. The volatility will certainly be scary at times, but you have decades to recover from any temporary market downturn. The higher expected returns of stocks will get you to $100,000 much faster than if you were playing it safe with bonds. That said, you need to actually stay invested during those downturns, because an allocation you cannot stick with is worse than a suboptimal allocation you can hold through thick and thin. The fourth lever is time. The earlier you start your journey, the more time compound interest has to help you. If you are 18 or 22 and watching this right now, you have an advantage that no amount of money can buy. You have decades for compounding to work its magic. A 22-year-old investing $300 a month will hit $100,000 before a 32-year-old investing $500 a month, despite saving less annually. Time is the most powerful variable in the compound interest equation. It is the only variable that you can never get back once it is gone. I want to close with a visualization that I hope stays with you forever. Imagine a flywheel, which is a massive and heavy disc that is incredibly hard to get spinning. When you first start pushing, nothing seems to happen. You push and push and push, and the thing barely moves at all. This is the first 100,000. Your efforts feel wasted and the progress feels insignificant. You wonder if you should give up and go do something where you can see immediate results right away. But here is the thing about flywheels. Once they finally start moving, they build momentum. Each push adds to the speed accumulated from all your previous pushes. Eventually, the flywheel is spinning so fast that your individual pushes barely matter compared to the momentum already built up. The flywheel is now effectively powering itself. The first $100,000 is the energy required to get that flywheel spinning. It is the hardest, most grueling, and least rewarding part of the process. But it is the part that makes everything else possible. Once you cross that threshold, you aren't just a person saving money anymore. You are an owner of a wealth-generating machine that will eventually do more work than you ever could with your own two hands. So if you are in the middle of that grind right now, if you are at 10,000 or 50,000 and it feels like you're going nowhere, don't stop. Keep pushing that flywheel because the magic is waiting for you on the other side. And I promise you, when you finally look back from that first six-figure milestone, you'll realize it was the best investment of time you ever made. Thanks for watching. If you want to see the specific portfolio I used to reach my first 100K, click the video on the screen now. See you in the next one.